What you can expect to be demonstrated in this video: how easy it is to create a good looking and functional graphic user interface in C#, how to provide functionality to the GUI elements you have created, how to apply simple logic to optimize your code, and how everything demonstrated comes together to form a functioning calculator. These are valuable skills to learn, as almost all applications developed in C# will require some kind of GUI, and knowing how to optimize your code will save you significant amounts of time, as well as lowering the potential for errors in the code. In this video, I'll demonstrate the functions of a calculator I've created using C# and the code behind that functionality. This video is aimed at those who have at least some experience with C# or another programming language, as it will be difficult to understand the concepts shown here without having been presented with them beforehand. This video will include a full transcript for the hard of hearing, which you can find a link for in the description. When we load the calculator project into Visual Studio, the first thing we need to do is open the designer. Here you can change the layout of the window, and by clicking on the background of the window, we can see the various properties attributed to that window on the right hand side of our screen. Here I have changed the text shown in the top of the window to calculator. I've set the show icon field to false, so it doesn't show an icon in the top left of the window. And we've changed the maximize box to false, so the user can't maximize the window. And changed the form border style to fixed single, so the user can't change the size of the window. On the left hand side of the screen, we find the toolbox, and here we can add various things to our window, such as buttons and text boxes. To do that, we simply double click on the button or drag and drop what we want to place it. We can also change the properties of each individual element. So by clicking on one of the buttons, we can see the button's properties on the right hand side. And here I have changed the size of the button, I've changed the text in that button, and I've also changed the name of the button, which we're going to call back to in our code. And we can do the same with the text boxes. We can change the name of the text box, we can change the text displayed in the text box, and we can change the size and the background color and the font. In the properties panel on the right hand side of the screen, there's a button called events. Clicking on that button shows various events that we can assign. And the one that we're interested in is what happens when a click occurs. So in this case, I have created an event called button click, which is assigned to each of the relevant buttons. And in our code, we can see the logic that I've written to make the buttons work. For the number buttons, I have created a variable called button B, and then assigned that variable the button sender function, which means that when the button is clicked, the button sender function will send the fact that a click has occurred, as well as whatever was written on the button itself. So if we click the number 1, it will send a click and the number 1. This means that we can create an event code to handle most of our buttons without having to code them individually. And now to deal with the operators, such as subtract and divide. To do this, I've created a new event called operator click. The operator click event adds the clicked operator to the variable operation so that we can call the variable later to complete the equation. The equals button is where I handle the completion of the equations via the equals button click event. And here you'll see a switch operation. which determines what operator was clicked and how to complete the equation. So if the divide operator was pressed, the switch operation takes what is in the value variable and divides it by what is currently in the text box. Now there are a few places in the code where logic needs to be used. The first is an if-else statement in our button click event. These if-else statements check to see if there is a 0 in the text box and overwrites it when the buttons are pressed, so that we don't end up with a 0 at the start of each equation. The second part of the statement checks to see if a decimal point has been pressed and will not allow more than one decimal point per equation. The second place we find logic in the code is another if-else statement in the operator clicked event, which allows the calculator to perform multiple operations in a row by stating that if the value variable does not equal 0, which is the bang equals is does not equal. If it does not equal 0, then the equals button pressed event is automatically fired when an operator is clicked. And that's what equals button dot perform click means. The clear entry and clear buttons are quite simple by comparison, with the clear button setting the result text box to 0 and setting the value to 0, setting the value variable to 0. And the clear event button is even simpler, just setting the result variable to the result text box to 0. By launching the application, we can see the various functions of the calculator in action. We can add numbers, we can subtract numbers, we can perform multiple calculations in a row without having to hit the equals button. And whenever we type a number into the calculator, the 0 at the start disappears thanks to the if-else statement in the button pressed operation. And we, of course, can't add more than one decimal place per number as well. If we made a mistake, the clear button will clear what's in the text box and not what's in the value. This concludes the demonstration. If you'd like to make a calculator in C# yourself, I've added a link to a tutorial you can follow in the description of this video. If you'd like to start learning to code, there's a link in the description to a beginner-friendly learning path on W3 Schools. Or if you're more advanced than just picking up C#, then the description also contains a link to a LinkedIn learning course that will get you started on your journey. Thank you very much.